The TGA has approved the use of Pfizer as a COVID-19 booster for Australians 18 plus. This is an important step, and it will mean that Australia will be one of the most highly vaccinated societies in the world, one of the most recently vaccinated communities in the world, and one of the first to receive a whole of population booster program. In particular, and John will go in more detail to both the decision and the processes, the TGA has approved Pfizer as an 18 plus booster, and very importantly, and Professor Murphy, Professor Kelly, Professor Skerritt, Atagi and others have been at pains to point out that this is about additional protection and that you remain fully vaccinated with 2 vaccines. The next step is that Atagi, the Australian Technical Advisory Group on Immunisation, will provide final advice. They have been working on an interim basis with the TGA, but subject to that Atagi final advice, we intend to commence the general population booster program no later than the 8th of November. And we have the supplies, we have the distribution mechanisms. We'll just work with the states, the GPs, the pharmacies, the Commonwealth vaccination clinics and the Indigenous vaccination clinics to ensure everything's in place. And we will commence aged care and disability as a priority. This morning I had a very constructive conversation with my Victorian counterpart, the State Health Minister Martin Foley, and Victoria, which of course has the most significant current outbreak, will be looking to commence their aged care and disability support booster for those that are 6 months plus, since they've had their second dose in the imminent future. So that's very constructive, and I thank them for that. And then finally, as I say, it's a universal booster, and so it's available for people who've had Pfizer, AstraZeneca or Moderna, although it's nobody who has had a second dose of Moderna would yet qualify, as that's been more recent. But as people come to the 6 month plus time frame since their second dose, Pfizer will be available. John will set out other regulatory applications which are pending from different companies. Then in terms of international travel, the Prime Minister has indicated that I've signed off on the Biosecurity Declaration Order, which means one very simple thing. From the 1st of November, double-vaxxed Australians will be able to leave the country and return to the country. And so fully vaccinated Australians will not require an exemption to depart Australia from the 1st of November. This is the first stage of our international reopening. Subsequently, we'll have a second stage focusing on students and critical workers. We're also looking, as the Prime Minister has indicated, at early arrangements with Singapore, and then we'll look at general travel for tourism and other purposes for people entering the country. Also pleased to be able to report that overnight we've received our first shipment of Ronapreve, the combination monoclonal antibody therapy that will now be made available via the hospital process for treating patients with COVID-19. And then finally, just in terms of the rollout, another 227,000 vaccinations yesterday. We're now at over 34.8 million doses. Very significantly, we've passed the 18 million first dose mark, and we're at 87.4% of Australian 16 plus who've had a first dose. And in terms of second doses, we're at 15.4 million 16 plus and 74.8%, but just over 1 million Australians to come forward to have their second dose to achieve the 80% double vaccinated rate. So just over 1 million Australians to come forward to achieve the 80% double vaccinated rate for the national average. And then finally, the purpose of all of this is to protect the most vulnerable. Our 70 plus population now has a 98.7% first vaccination rate and over 88% second vaccination rate. I do particularly want to thank John and all of the officials at the TGA and all of the officials and advisors at ATAGI for their work. TGA, it's a marathon, not a sprint. John, just as a personal example, confessed to me this morning he hadn't been home to Victoria for 6 months. He's just been working through. And that's the sort of support we've had from our scientists and officials at the TGA, in the health department, in the other departments, and also the personal staff. You know, our personal staff work phenomenal hours. They're working, until midnight last night. They're working from the earliest hours in the morning, and so, it's been a great challenge as a nation, but we are immensely well served by those who are in public service.